where I play, as long as I go number one in the draft.
From the Erie Otters, Connor McDavid.
From the London Knights, Mitch Marner.
From the Western Hockey League's Brandon Wheat Kings, Nolan Patrick.
This is Tracking the Draft with Craig Button.
He checks an enormous amount of boxes. Nobody in this draft did more with less. I absolutely love him. It's not his skills that anybody's concerned about. It's that playing attitude. And quite frankly, it's really poor.
Speeding towards the future of the NHL.
From the U.S. Development Program, Jacob Truba.
From Färjestad of the Swedish Elite League, Jonas Brodin.
From the Boston U Terriers, Brady Tkachuk.
He could play in the NHL next year. He's one of those guys.
Here's your host, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 11 of Tracking the Draft with Craig Button, the Director of Scouting for TSN, former GM in the NHL, and Stanley Cup champion, will join us very shortly. He's also the Director of Scouting for Duckman's Domination in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League and the president of hockey for High Level Scouting. So Craig is a very, very busy man, and he's on the road this week. We'll tell you all about that as we go. This is the show where stars of tomorrow are discovered and discussed, and it takes place on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. So we're super glad that you tuned in, whether you're watching on our YouTube channel or you're listening in the audio format of our podcast. We are just glad that you have joined us. And you can see the three players we are chatting about today. Matt Savoie is our top shelf talent, member of the Winnipeg Ice and the WHL. Daltac Scouting Service has this prospect, 23 goals, 41 assists in just 47 games this year. Craig's list has him ranked number 8. Another Matt, this time Mathew Ward, center and a winger with Swift Current in the WHL. Pipeline Prospects has this future player, 21 goals, 28 assists in 49 games. Craigslist has him ranked 71. And earlier we were talking about the Manitoba Capital. Next player, we'll be talking about the nation's capital. Tyler Boucher recently jumped ship from Boston University to go to Ottawa of the OHL. The Tornadoes in the UFHL have this player, and he has 2 goals and 1 assist in his first 7 games of the season in the OHL since joining the Ottawa 67s. And he was drafted 10th overall by the Ottawa Senators last year, so he is playing right under their noses now. Craig Button joins us courtesy of the UFHL hotline. Yes, you can become a scout just like Craig, track the same players, and then get rewarded when they become pros in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. It is so cool. You are going to games, whether that's WHL, AJHL, USHL, whatever league you can find. Find a great player. You can list them on the open market for $20, or you can bid on players in the annual futures auction. And as mentioned, when they turn pro, when they get drafted, or a team gets interested in a player, you can get rewarded. Just check out www.uffsports.com, register as a scout, pay the $25 fee in score coin, $25 US worth of score coin, and you're in. You can start scouting players. And it's not just hockey. We have basketball, football, baseball, and of course, hockey. All 4 major sports you can scout in. Soon to be adding golf. We just announced English Premier League soccer, so there is lots of opportunities, and horse racing as well. Can you believe that? It's the sky is the limit when it comes to these fantasy leagues that UFFS has, but you can become a scout in all of them. So in this format, you own the game, so make sure you get in the game at uffsports.com. And as mentioned, this show proudly broadcast on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. If you have a fantasy show, we would love to hear from you. UFSN at uffsports.com. That's UFSN at uffsports.com. send us an email. We'd love to chat with you about your programming, and check out the YouTube channel for our past shows. UFBA Today, UFHL Now. When the football season is on, we have UFAFL Nation. Jamie Thomas right now does a Legends of the Gridiron, focusing on the American Football Legends League, and Inside UFLB, hosted by myself as I'm the head of baseball. So lots of great stuff going on at UFSN, and we would like to add to it. So please, if you have a fantasy show, reach out to us, let us know, and we would love to chat. All right, so we have the 3 players. Now we just need the knowledge. And for that, we bring in my good friend, a very knowledgeable and passionate man who's hanging out in Manitoba right now. Let's bring in Mr. Craig Button.
Here he is, the director of scouting for TSN, former GM of the Calgary Flames, and a Stanley Cup champion with the Dallas Stars. Plus, he's a sharp-dressed man with a heart of gold and a passion to match it. Craig Button.
Craig, we catch you on the road this time in the Manitoba capital as you will take in the Winnipeg Ice and Lethbridge Hurricanes tonight. And that just happens to bring up the focus of our top shelf talent for this week. And we are talking about Matt Savoie, a guy a lot of people watch. There's some really good players on this Winnipeg Ice team. Matt Savoie in the spotlight for our top shelf talent. Center and a winger with the Ice. Daltech Scouting Service has this player, and 23 goals, 41 assists in 47 games, ranked 8th on the January Craig's list. What are you expecting to see from Matt Savoie when you watch him tonight?
Well, I'm expecting to see a dynamic player because that's what Matt is. And you know what's fascinating? You know what? I'm going to jump right here on that center/RW spot because you know he plays center and he's a good center. And but you know as I watch him and I continuously ask myself, is he going to be better served as a winger in the National Hockey League? And that's part of the evaluation too. You know, outside of the skills. You know, and certainly we've seen a lot of players drafted as centers or playing center before they get to the NHL, and then they become wingers and really good wingers. So, you know, that's not I don't want that anybody to think that that's a criticism of Matt. It just speaks to, you know, where can you best optimize this spot. Now, I'm going to carry that forth, Dean, and talk about him as a right winger because I love when Matt Savoie gets the puck on his stick on the move because he's dynamic and he's threatening with that speed, and he just needs a little bit of space to open up even more space for himself. And I think that becomes in and of itself a real top-notch quality to have. But at the same time, in the middle of the ice, and this is one of the things that's impressed me so much about Matt, is his ability to round out his game. When you're younger and you can skate by players, you know, you don't have to think about opening up the ice through playmaking, by speeding up, slowing down, delaying. And when I watch Matt play now, I see all those different elements. I see a player that understands, hey, wait a sec, you know, I don't have to go at 60 K. I'm going to slow it down to 40, and it backs off defenders. It opens up space. He's not just thinking shooting. He's thinking, what's the best play I have? I can shoot if it's there, but if it's not there, I'm going to make plays. And I think that his game has expanded so much in significant ways. And I'll use the scoring as an example. You know, if you're just going to skate and look to use your shot, that's fine, and he's good in that area. But his game's expanded because if the shot's not there, he can make plays, and he makes really good plays. So now you got a player that you have to think about as somebody that can beat you with speed, can beat you with a shot, can now make plays to beat you, can hold the puck and delay to open up other things. So when I talk about an expansion of a young player's game, I've really been impressed with Matt Savoie and really impressed with how he has taking those skills at a younger. A lot of times players are learning it as they get a little bit older and continue that. He's learning it at the ripe old age of 17, and that speaks to a real high end hockey IQ, and that in and of itself is really impressive.
And, this is another player that was kind of caught. He played 22 games in 2020 in the WHL, split in the USHL and AJHL in time. Is that the biggest improvement and noticeable aspect of his game that you've noticed? Is that he's not that he was ever one-dimensional before, but he seems to be more reactive to the situation instead of, going in as a lot of young players as more kind of tunnel vision. He maybe doesn't have that tunnel vision of what's happening. He's open to more opportunities around him.
Yeah, I love that phrase, Dean, open to more opportunities. The game is played in motion. The game is played on the move. It's not like you come up to the line of scrimmage and you say, okay, here's the play, and, now we're going to run our routes and away we go. And so you have to be able to think in motion, on the move, to changing circumstances in front of you. And I think that's exactly as you described with Matt Savoie. You think about, he played those games with Winnipeg, as a 15-year-old. And, there's a lot of maturity, that hasn't taken place to that point in time. He goes to the USHL last year during the pandemic. And I thought it really benefited him. The game is a little bit tighter, less space in the USHL. Players are older. Game's a little bit, harder, deeper down through the lineup, where his skill can't just, give him that flexibility to operate. He's got to not just have the skill and use the physical skill. He's got to use that IQ and that mental acumen and that processing to be able to get his skills in there. I think playing in the USHL last year really helped him with that. And I think it's come back here to Winnipeg and translated into a very, very successful season. When I look at Matt Savoie and we look at the rank, and I always say, we always want to look at the number and say, oh, he's 8, oh, he should be 4. I can tell you this, Matt could be anywhere from 2 to 8 on the list. Like he's that good. I think what you have to do when you look at Matt is like, okay, here's what he is. And this is what teams will be doing. Not necessarily me, but what teams will be doing. What teams have to do is go, we know what his skill is. Okay, how do we support him? Where does he fit into our lineup? What types of players do we have that, can complement him? How does he complement other players that are in our group and go from there? Teams are made up of all different types of players, and certainly everybody wants skill. But when you're looking from an individual team point of view, you're looking at how Matt's game, how that type of player, how that skill set comes into your group, and how it enhances things. Ultimately, you're trying to get players into a group that enhances your team. Certainly, Matt Savoie has the skills to play in the NHL and be successful in the NHL, but it doesn't mean that in the upcoming draft that everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, that's absolutely the guy that I have to have. And that's why I go, could he be 2? Yeah. Could he be 4? Yeah. Could he be 8? Yeah. I think there's that, what I call that sliding scale, that is not a reflection of Matt Savoie, the player, or the talents of Matt Savoie. It's more about what do teams have and where do they sit at the present time of the draft, in looking at different players that can come in and enhance their team.
32 franchises with 32 different lists, as you like to say, Craig. So it's a general ranking. You're putting him in a spot, but he could easily go top 5, as you mentioned. And I watched an interview with him on TSN where he said he likes to look and maybe compare his game to guys like Matt Barzal and Braden Point. Offensively, certainly, I think there's some comparisons. Do you see the all-around game with Matt Savoie that maybe a Braden Point has as well?
I'm glad you went to the Braden Point angle, because that I see more of Braden Point in Matt Savoie than Matt Barzal, and Matt has those those brilliant moments, I'll call them, and we see them all the time. Braden Point's got a complete, well-rounded game. And I think that Matt has really progressed into that area. And when I talk about shooting and holding the puck and making plays and giving up the puck, I think that that's Braden Point. And Matt Savoie is competitive and, very well. And, Braden Point's a really, really good player. And that goes without saying. And that's where you go and you evaluate Matt Savoie and you look at him with respect to how do we support him? What do we need around him? But I clearly do really see a greater resemblance to the game of Braden Point than that of Matt Barzell.
And when we look at this player, I'm guessing it's developmental. There's no fundamental issues wrong with this game. I love how you separate those two. As a player gets older, matures, develops, those are the things they get stronger. Do you see any inherent weaknesses in Matt Savoie's game?
No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, everybody, Dean, when you're evaluating players and you're evaluating talent, can say, I wish he did this, or oh, geez, he doesn't do this so well, or what about this? And that's part of the evaluation. But this I know, and this is fact. I have never, ever heard a team stand up, draft a player, and after drafting that player, we drafted him, but we didn't like this about him, and we didn't like that about him, and we didn't like that about him, and we don't think he's very good in this, right? They're always gushing about the player because ultimately, when you're selecting a player, you want that player. That's the player that you, as I say, you put the stake in the ground on and you celebrate that player. And now you got to do everything to help that player realize that potential. So to me, if you want to, every single player, with the exception of very, very few, not everybody, with the exception of very few players, you can find a flaw in every player. You can find a flaw in every player. You're not drafting players for flaws. You're drafting players for the positives, and certainly Matt Savoie, when I would look at his game and look at his potential, it's about development. I don't see inherent flaws in his game.
Excellent stuff. All right, well, let's move from the Manitoba Capital to Swift Current, and we went from Matt to Mathew. Now, Mathew Ward, center, sometimes plays wing as well. We'll get your opinion on that with Swift Current to the WHL. Pipeline Prospects has this player that they listed, and he has 21 goals, 28 assists in 49 games, ranked 71st on the recent Craigslist. And we mentioned this player last week when we were comparing players, but let's give him the full spotlight and tell us about what you think of Mathew Ward.
He's really, really skilled and, quick and fast. And, he's got an aggressive mindset. Like, he's not somebody that some players are, when I say aggressive mindset, some players have they're cerebral, they're not wait and see, but they're going to size it up, and then they're going to mentally process things and then act. I think Mathew has really, really good, strong hockey sense. But he's also got this he's going to be after it and on it. He's going to be after it and on it. He's in it. He's in the fight. He's in the battles. And right now, he's a young player that has a tremendous amount of physical maturity ahead of him. And when I say physical maturity, I'm just talking about strength, carrying the thing. Everywhere that Matt goes to play, he's going to benefit by becoming stronger. You look at players. And I've said this to you before, Dean. I see a lot of bigger players that are denied easily, that get pushed, that get pushed away, that don't fight through resistance. And Mathew Ward doesn't always get through resistance because right now he needs to have that physical maturity and that strength to better do it. But I'll tell you what, he does not allow himself to be denied, and he tries to push through resistance. And yeah, he gets knocked down at times, but he gets right back up and he goes right back in to where you get rewarded. Good hands, good head. He's in and around the net. And when I say that aggressive mindset, he's an attacker. He's going after you. He's trying to break you down. And he's a fascinating player for me. Because, I look at that 71 and I get that rank and I don't feel good about it. Because I think it's too low, and so at times I have to put a stake in the ground too. I got to say, no, I really like this player, and here's why. And when I project and say, hey, listen, once he gets bigger and stronger, when I say more strength and the bigger, I'm not worried about the size, just gets stronger. why shouldn't he be higher on my list? Why can't he be a Cam Atkinson type player? Like, that type of, like enthusiastic, skilled, competitive, attacking type player. I think Mathew has that potential. So when I look at 71, like, you know what, it's too low for me. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, that's the beauty of evaluation is your Craig's list changes over the months and year, and what it is at the start of the year certainly isn't what it will likely be at the end of the year. I mentioned the position, and we talked about this with Savoy. Do you see Ward as more of a centerman or a winger?
Yeah, for me, it's a fascinating question. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because I think I could make a case for him to be a winger. What I like about Mathew, either as a center, as a wing, and we know they're different positions, is I don't see somebody that gets, as a winger, gets stuck on the wing. I don't see a player that, like, when he's outside the dots, gets caught out there. And, like, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Zachary Benson, who's in next year's draft. He's just an unbelievable player, plays for the Winnipeg Ice. He's another player, not tall in stature, but when I watch him play, I almost get to a point where it doesn't matter where they play, because they're so good at understanding where they have to play to be successful. And again, I go back to the game in motion, right? The game's always in motion, and you gotta read the play, you gotta respond to what's happening in front of you. So when I see Mathew being able to do those different things in different areas of the ice at all times, like, I'm not so sure that center or wing matters. I think that it may be situational. We'll use them at center in these situations. We'll use them on the wing here. But, when I talked about Matt Savoie, and I try to figure him getting the puck on the move and how dangerous he can be, I don't think it's the same argument for Mathew Ward. Because I think that the way he uses space and the way he probes to find that space, he's not a static player. So I'm not so sure that it matters if he's a center or a wing, and the situation may dictate. When I say I'm talking within game. I'm talking about who your opponent might be. You might be better off playing him on the wing in one situation, play him in the center. I like the versatility, and that's how I would explain, the difference between him center wing and just the scenario with Matt Savoie, center right wing potential.
We've discussed players and types of players a lot, and I've watched a lot of really talented, super skilled players in junior not be able to transition to the NHL because they could only play one sort of way. Does Mathew Ward have the skill set to be able to play kind of anywhere in the lineup as he progresses, or is he going to have to be a skill guy only?
Yeah, no, I don't think he has to be a skilled guy only. And I'll say this: if I projected Mathew Ward as a top end skill player, right? We wouldn't even be talking about him at 71. So I see him as a player that can play in different parts of your lineup and contribute offensively. But he's not just a player that has to rely on offensive productivity to be successful. He like I said, he's quick, he's aggressive, he can be a player that's a catalyst for turnovers and making opponents uncomfortable because he's tenacious. He's got a tenacity to his game, and that competitive spirit that he has. He just says, you're not stopping me, you're not denying me. I'm gonna get involved in this area because this is what I got to do at this moment in time. So, do I see him as a frontline player? No, I don't see him as a top line player. But do I see him being able to fit into a part of your lineup? That's why I use Cam Atkinson. And maybe I use Cam Atkinson just because of the stature and whatnot. But at the same time, you look at a guy like Brendan Gallagher, and Mathew Ward's not Brendan Gallagher. But Brendan Gallagher's had a really good NHL career because of his willingness to dig in and compete and be tenacious. And yeah, he's got skill. We know Brendan has skill. And I think that Mathew, given the time to mature, could be a player and has the potential to be a player that can fit into different parts of your lineup and contribute in that way in different manners, not just on the score sheet.
All right, well, Craig joins us courtesy of the UFHL hotline, as scouting is a huge part of the platform on UFFS and the lifeblood of franchises in the UFHL. Prospects, free agents, you name it, they go through scouts. So you should get in the game where you own the game, start putting your scouting talent to good use. You can become an independent scout, or you can form a partnership with an existing franchise. And if you want more information, on Twitter at the UFHL, and DMs are open. You can also go to www.uffsports.com and register as a scout and start listing players on the open market. Okay, let's now jump into the time machine and go back to last year, where Tyler Boucher was drafted 10th overall by the Ottawa Senators. He's with Ottawa of the Ontario Hockey League now, and the Tornadoes took him in the UFHL draft to 2 goals, 1 assist in 7 games. Last year with the U.S. program, started with Boston University and recently jumped to the OHL and joined the 67s. Were you surprised by that, Craig?
Not really, and I'll go through a couple of different layers of this. Tyler, playing with the U.S. national team development program, the players are taking the college path. He grows up, thinking that that's the best path for him. And, and in most cases, players embrace it and it's something that works out for them. But I think what's really important, and I think Tyler recognized this, is that it's not right for me. I need to be in a different environment. I don't think he was looking at Boston University as something negative, as much as he was saying this isn't the right style of game for him. And, he'd been suspended at BU, maybe hadn't had his footing. And now I go to the second part of it. And, to be able to say, hey, wait a second, I got to step away here. It's not that, it's a knock against Boston University, just saying, hey, I got to take control of my career, and this is what I think is a better path for me at this point in time, and embrace it and go. Now, when I say that I'm not surprised, the profile of Tyler Boucher as a player is one of somebody that's got size. He's physically imposing. We use words like rugged and, punishing and everything. I don't know if Tyler's a punishing player, but I do know this. He's a really good skater, and he can impact the game and carve out space for himself and, create a lot of opportunities with respect to, forechecking and bearing down on opponents and creating turnovers and cycling the puck. So, you start to think about, if he's going to play physical and he's going to, be suspended, is that the right place for him to be? Does he feel like, that's going to develop his game to the greatest extent? Does he want to play more games? But I think when you look at Tyler, I think that he felt that going and being in Ottawa and the OHL was something that would help him take the qualities that define him as a player and develop them, to a greater state. And that's why I look at it and say, hey, I'm not surprised that he left, because I think he just sees it as something that better fits, where he's at in his game right now and the specific attributes in his game.
We just talked about, whether players, whether they have size or not, whether they're in the game. A small guy staying in the fight and a big guy without size or with size that doesn't stay in the fight doesn't do it much good. Is this a guy in Tyler Boucher who's, constantly using his size and body, whether that's, a big check, and we talked about those as kind of not as prevalent as they used to be, but maybe a bump here and there. We've talked about protecting the puck and using your size. Do you see Tyler Boucher doing that constantly?
Well, no, I don't. But here's what I would say. That's developmental for Tyler. And this is part of, understanding, how do you get your game in the game? And, what I would say with Tyler is Tyler has skills that are good. But I think that he has to have the focus first and foremost of I'm not going to begin with a skill mindset. I'm going to begin with a power mindset. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. What I mean by that is exactly how you just said, carving out space. If Tyler's going to come down and dangle defensemen and try to stick handle around defensemen and, be that type of a player, I don't think he's going to have very much success, and his size doesn't matter. Now, if you come down on a defenseman and you're coming down and because he is a good skater, and now you're going to say, hey, listen, you're going to have to handle me based on my strength. I'm gonna get the puck by you. I'm gonna protect the puck. If you want to come and get to the puck, you're gonna have to come through my body, and my body's big, and my body's hard to get through. And now holding the puck, I talked about cycling the puck. I talked about leaning in, attacking underneath opponents, and making them handle you to your greatest strength. His greatest strength, he's a really good skater, really good size. His greatest strength isn't stick handling. And it's not that it's bad. I'm not saying that at all. But you got to understand, okay, how do you get the biggest advantage you have to be able to give you advantages in other areas? So when I say he's got to start from a power, how do I use my size to carve out space, keep space, make opponents uncomfortable? It's got to start with that mindset as opposed to because if he's going to just try to stick handle and everything, defensemen are just going to knock the puck off a stick, and it doesn't matter how big he is. It doesn't matter how well he skates. You got to impose yourself and make it really difficult on opponents to handle you. And I think that for Tyler, that's the developmental aspect of his game. And I think, whether he's playing for Albie O'Connell with the Boston University Terriers or he's playing for Dave Cameron with the Ottawa 67s, these are the areas of the game that have to be emphasized to Tyler. But it's developmental, and for Tyler understanding that, that's where the success of his overall game will come from and stem from, not from reversing those things. Because when players that are bigger reverse in terms of their thinking, in terms of what they try to put first, they end up never having an impact on the game. And that's that's where the development part comes for Tyler Boucher and for others, but specifically with Tyler.
So if he can take those steps and keep developing, who do you see him developing into at the NHL level with all things considered?
Well, I would think that the Ottawa Senators. I'm without talking to them, but maybe a Josh Anderson. When you watch Josh and you watch, he was a 4th round draft pick, I believe, to Columbus, over in Montreal now, but a good skater. And, it was something that I think Josh, in junior, through the early part of his professional career was continuously working on, and probably still needs reminders at different times, because he can skate and he can shoot the puck and he can still, but if he starts with a skill mindset, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm diminished, like don't be skilled. I'm not saying that, but it's where I guess it's what you lead with. And when Josh leads with skating and power, good luck. They don't call him the power horse for nothing. I think that's where I see Tyler Boucher's game trying to emulate. And if I was in Ottawa, I would be trying to give lots of examples of Tyler Boucher. I'd be giving lots of examples to Tyler Boucher of Josh Anderson. Listen, I hear a lot of this. Like, Tom Wilson is one of the most unique players in the NHL. There aren't any Tommy Wilsons out there. I want to be very clear on that. So if you hear comparisons to Tommy Wilson, I don't think it's fair to Tyler Boucher.
Yeah, just like comparing somebody who's fast to Connor McDavid. There's fast, and then there's Connor McDavid fast. And it all comes down to expectations, Craig. You talk about that a lot with teams when they're drafting players, but it also has to come back to the player himself and the expectations and not trying to be something that they are not.
Well, but that's again, those expectations. If you keep telling Tyler Boucher you got to be like Tom Wilson, well, what do you think? He's not going to try to do those things. He's going to. The players are trying to please their organizations. They're trying to please their coaches. Yeah. So you have to be very realistic. Hey, Tyler, this is your game. These are 2 or 3 things that we want you to work on continuously, to remind yourself of, and continue to develop those things. We're going to help you. And don't put, because just because you put, if you put unrealistic expectations on a player, like you're helping that player fail. You're not helping him succeed. Now, how many times, Dean, have you heard me say the NHL fails players more than players fail on their own? So. If an organization starts with unrealistic projections, unrealistic expectations, they have begun the process of failing that player.
Very true. Very true. Enjoy the game tonight. You'll see the number 3 ranked team in Canada, the Winnipeg Ice and the Lethbridge Hurricanes. And, that's going to be a fun matchup for sure. And let's hope that Manitoba hockey fans, even Brandon fans, get a lot of playoff action this year. No show next week. I'm going to be off for a few days, so you get the week off as well, Craig. Thanks so much for joining me.
Well, I'll take the week off and just do a whole lot of work on prospects and development and scouting and everything, because that's where we're headed to. We're getting down to the stretch run, which is fun. And it's been fun, Dean, to watch the players, because let's not forget, since March of 2020, they've gone through a lot of different pauses, postponements, cancellations, and a lot of uncertainty. And we're still talking about how incredibly talented these young players are.
You betcha. Enjoy the game tonight.
This is a serious message.
Craig Button joins us on the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports Hotline. Become a scout and make money while providing prospects to the Ultimate Franchise Hockey League.
What you talking about, mister?
Pay that man his money.
I'm your huckleberry. Check out the details at www.uffsports.com.
It's serious.
I like it a lot.
I said we got a winner.
UFFS. You own the game.
Can't wait to do Craig's Counsel with all the viewers and the listeners. That's where it's scouting tips and story time. If you have a specific skill you want to ask Craig about when watching players, or a specific position or a specific player, or if you have a question about a past player he's scouted, drafted, or watched, or anything else. He's got a lot of fun, cool stories, and he has a lot of knowledge that he likes to share and help other people. Craig is a man who loves to pay it forward. A lot of people helped him get to where he is, and he would like to help you get to where you want to go. So scouting tips and story time on Craig's Counsel very, very soon. I can't wait to do that. If you have a specific question for Craig, trackingthedraft@gmail.com. That's trackingthedraft@gmail.com. We'll add it to the list. We have a bunch of them from past episodes that we didn't actually get to that we'll try to get to as well. And as mentioned, this show proudly being broadcast on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. UFSN is your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We want to be where you go for your fantasy news, whether it's shows about our league or shows about future NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball. If you have a fantasy show and you'd like to join the network, we would love to chat with you. Whether you want to focus on one of our leagues, whether you want to focus on your own franchise in our leagues, or whether you want to focus just strictly on fantasy sports in general, and it doesn't have to be specifically about our leagues. We are looking for all kinds of hosts to join the fun, where we want to be your one-stop fantasy sports shop. If you think you'd like to be a part of it, send us an email, ufsn@uffsports.com. That's ufsn@uffsports.com. You can also check out the Twitter handle @UFS Network, and the DMs are open on there. All right. That's going to wrap things up for another episode, Season 3, Episode 11. You can find past episodes on our YouTube channel. Please give us a like, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you think of the show. And of course, all of our shows are out in audio format wherever you find your favorite podcast. So make sure you check that out. Subscribe, like, leave us a review. Let us know what you think, good or bad. We want to hear from you, because if it's good, we'll keep doing it. If it's not, we'll try to improve. So find our podcast wherever you get yours, and check us out on our YouTube channel, Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. If you're searching for our podcast in audio format, it's simply Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. Big thanks to Craig Button as usual. No show next week. I'm on vacation, so we'll take a bit of a break. We'll give Craig some time off and give you guys a chance to get your fantasy prospects in order for the next time we chat. Thank you very much to Craig Button. Thank you to you for watching and listening. And thank you for Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. We'll see you in a couple weeks.